welcome to this amazing Compass conference. I couldn't be more excited that we have such an inspirational, innovative, insightful set of thinkers and speakers, doers and dreamers, writers and organisers with us today. My name is Caroline Lucas, and I am so delighted as well that as a new co-chair of Compass, as well as a former Green Party MP and leader, that I've been asked to say a few words of introduction this morning. So first of all, welcome. Thank you for being here. And the fact that there are so many of us here today, I think, shows the priority that you have given this issue, because we recognise that the overwhelming threat posed by the rise of the far right means that we have to do things differently. We know that they succeed when progressive forces are divided and defensive. And so we're here to show that change is possible through collective organising, forging alliances, building trust, because we know that is the only way both to defeat reform and to defeat the causes of reform as well.
So I'll make 3 brief points. First, that this month's local election results demonstrate that in spite of gains for Reform UK, there is still a progressive majority in this country. Our challenge and our responsibility is to start acting like one. Second, that if we're to face down the far right, cooperation between progressives is not only necessary, but possibly more controversially desirable as well. And that is why a fairer voting system is essential, both because it offers us the best opportunity of transforming our political system and keeping Farage out of number 10, and because political pluralism delivers better politics. And third, my friends, as you know, the stakes are so unimaginably high and the risks of a reform-led government so very, very real. Fixing our democracy will require levels of boldness and bravery that collectively, quite frankly, we have failed to muster in the past. That has to change. This is the moment when it must change, and we must all of us, step up now. Now, May's local elections demonstrated beyond doubt that two-party politics isn't just dying. Friends, two-party politics is dead and buried. For Labour, the results were a catastrophe. An object lesson, as Clive Lewis has said, in what happens when a social democratic party refuses to challenge the economic orthodoxy of the last 40 years. An orthodoxy that has pushed us into climate chaos, hollowed out public services, privatised what was ours, driven inequality to obscene levels, and rolled out the red carpet to an authoritarian right. And that is why Labour lost nearly 1,500 seats, as well as control of over 30 councils across England, while Reform won over 1,400 seats and took control of 14 councils. Now, these were good elections for the Greens. We won a record 587 seats. We gained control of 5 councils, won 2 elected mayors. We won our 2 seats in the Senate. The BBC National Vote Projection calculates how all of these local election results would translate into a national result at the general election. And in terms of the new bloc politics, it gives the right 43% and the left or progressives 51%. Now that puts us comfortably ahead, even before taking into account Plaid's success in Wales and the SNPs in Scotland. And look, I know I have to say in parenthesis that I am simplifying here, that I know that not every single Lib Dem or Labour is someone that we would all say are progressive, and you only need to look at coalition government or the government's complicity in the awful genocide that's happening in Gaza right now to see that. But I would still argue that there is enough orientation in those parties to say those are progressive parties too. So let us be clear that there is still a progressive majority in this country. But it is also clear that no single party can defeat the populist right on their own. Stopping reform and rebuilding the country is bigger than any one party. And there are lessons in this for all of us. And so to Labour, I would say, no one knows what politics will look like by the time of the next election, nor which party on the left will be the main challenger. But until the next election, what we do know for sure is that a Labour Prime Minister is the only route to democratic change. And that gives Labour a real responsibility to step up right now and to deliver on a genuinely progressive agenda. Because we know from bitter experience of Keir Starmer that it's perfectly possible for Labour leaders to make countless shiny promises before then simply torching them as soon as they gain office. That cannot be allowed to happen again. And to my own colleagues, I'd ask them to consider that even if the Greens increased our seats tenfold at the next general election, or even more than that, would that be the best outcome for Green politics if, at the same time, Nigel Farage were handed the keys to number 10? I believe that all of us who see ourselves as progressives have to change the way we organise. We have to broaden our culture. We have to expand our political imagination and finally abandon the tribalism that has really fractured progressive politics in this country for far too many years. So we urgently need to do politics differently, and that's what today is all about. Building trust, deepening relationships now, rather than trying to do it a few weeks before an election campaign. Now, I've been advocating a more plural politics for well over a decade. Almost exactly 10 years ago, I co-edited a book of essays on progressive politics with Labour's Lisa Nandy and Chris Bowers from the Lib Dems. And in our joint introduction, the three of us wrote, and I quote, "We are not proposing cooperation among the progressives because we have to, but because we want to. Quite simply, we believe that political pluralism delivers better answers and better government." I believed that then, and I believe it even more today. I've made the case that no single party can defeat the populist right on its own. But this isn't just about electoral calculus. It's about something far more profound. A recognition that no body and no single party has a monopoly on wisdom. An understanding that no party has an inalienable right to hold on to its power. Now, the Green Party has been badly burned in the past by an attitude from some in Labour that amounted to telling Greens to simply get out of the way. That cannot be the approach going forward. There is far too much at stake, and not when the public have so clearly rejected a politics in which two parties dominate and where everyone else is expected to dance to their tune. Shaping a new political culture requires a different strategy and a bolder set of goals. Now, we face huge challenges ahead, so let's start to try to stack things in our favour and not shut the door on the potential to transform the future simply because someone with the skills and the ideas that we could use might be in a different tribe. Our allies are in the unions, are in civil society groups, grassroots mobilisations, green and social justice groups, racial justice groups, refugee rights campaigns, and yes, sometimes in other political parties too. To fix Britain, we've got to break open the system, open up to new forms of power and politics, better distributed, more diverse, and a fairer voting system has to be at the heart of that transformation. Thank you. Yeah. Now listen, the Palace of Westminster, Gothic, rat-infested and crumbling into the Thames, has become a powerful symbol of political decay. The electoral system that sends MPs there is a crucial part of our democracy, a democracy that is not only a means to an end, but a value that expresses how fair, how open, how equal we are as a society. A fairer voting system isn't just about arithmetic outcomes. It's about changing the wider political culture. Because under proportional representation, politicians can't just rely on the votes of their own tribe. They're forced to reach out across political divides to the wider electorate and to those typically excluded from political calculation at all. And by a happy coincidence, a fairer voting system also makes our return to the EU far more plausible. since we could demonstrate to our EU partners that our decision to rejoin is one they can trust and not one that will simply be reversed with a change of government. So with the UK on course to see its 7th Prime Minister in a decade, it's clear that first past the post now delivers radical instability. Replacing this distorted and undemocratic system with PR would prevent ever again the absolute dictatorship by one party with only a small minority of the vote. Andy Burnham's commitment to electoral reform is why the Makerfield by-election matters so much. Andy Burnham is not the Messiah, but right now, if he recommits to PR at the earliest possible opportunity, and I would argue that if he becomes Prime Minister, he could introduce a fairer voting system in time for the next election. If he does that, then he is our best hope of stopping a far-right government gaining the keys to number 10 on barely a quarter of the national vote. And finally, for anyone who's still unpersuaded of the scale of the risk Reform UK poses, I would respectfully suggest that you've not been paying attention. Because Reform has made no secret of their plans to roll back decades of progress on environmental protection and human rights, to deport as many as 2 million people, establishing a UK version of Trump's ICE program, grabbing people off the streets, building mass detention centres, forcing people of colour to prove their right to be here, slashing action on climate change, repealing equality legislation and workers' rights, massively cutting public services, dismantling the NHS, further corroding and corrupting our politics and our democracy. You know, the mainstream media should stop treating them as if they're just another political party, because they are not. What dangerous complacency. What dangerous complacency is there in this country that leads so many to assume that the rise of the far right in Europe and elsewhere can't happen here? Friends, it can, and it is right now in front of our eyes. The brilliant and fearless organisation Hope Not Hate produces an annual State of Hate report. And in this year's, they conclude, and I quote, "The far right is more extreme, bigger, and bolder than ever before." In the words of their founder, Nick Lowells, "I've been fighting fascism now for over 35 years, and I've never known a time like this." This coming on top of radical climate and nature breakdown, on spiraling inequality, must galvanise us to change. So friends, in conclusion, this is a moment for bravery, for leadership with the courage to bring bold ideas to the table and the confidence to go out and win public support for them. We need to agree values before tactics, that's true. But the brave thing to do isn't to hide behind our values or use them as an excuse to continue doing politics in our tribes. The brave thing to do is to seek out those with whom we have more in common than divides us, to work with them where we can, and to call them out when they get things wrong. Even if the electoral maths did stack up and Labour could get more MPs under first past the post, that still isn't winning big enough. And we saw that with the evidence of the 2024 Loveless landslide. 63% of the seats on 34% of the vote, the lowest vote share ever to produce a majority government. But as a result, Labour's majority is brittle and unstable. To really win is to win people's hearts and minds, to promote a politics that is generous by design, a politics grounded in trust, openness, and the redistribution of power and resources. Winning the future can't be done by any political leader going it alone. The stakes are too high. Winning the future needs a new kind of political leadership and a new political culture, and that's what we're committed to building today. Thank you so much.